Yeah.
When I heard that, I confronted the police that came to the house later that afternoon. I said, what is up with that? Why on earth would you do something like that? Well, you don't have any evidence to support that your son's life is in danger. I said, we have the statements of 5 witnesses, one who saw my son shot and dropped to the ground and thrown in a car. And the police still listed him as a runaway for some months. It was the beginning of a giant cover-up on this case. I didn't know why, but that's what was happening.
Right.
A few weeks after Johnny was kidnapped, a small article appeared in the paper saying that there were 2 girls, 13 and 14, taken from Des Moines, taken to Omaha, Nebraska, and put into prostitution. They found a trail. They got the girls back. The men were caught. So I went to the police chief with the article, and I said, well, since Omaha is only 2 hours away, and it was yet another kidnapping in our town, would you call that police chief and find out what happened? Could it be connected to here? And our police chief said, I do not have a feel for that, so I'm not going to call. He did not. I did a press conference at that point, and shortly after the press conference, about a half an hour or so, I received a phone call telling me that if I continued to make waves, that I would die. That was my light bulb moment, that this was not a regular, isolated kidnapping where there's one perpetrator and one victim.
Sure.
I knew that it was organized, and I knew I had to find a way to prove it. And Johnny had been kept for a period of time in the basement of a farmhouse where pictures were taken of him being sexually molested. Those pictures were shown to prospective buyers. A buyer did step forth, came to the farmhouse, paid a certain amount of money, bought my son, and took my son with him. And that's when he was sold into what we now call human trafficking.
I want to go ahead and let people know
Sure.
that more information can be viewed, or if you have would like more information, you can go to www.johnnygosch, and that's JohnnyGosch.com. Again, JohnnyGosch.com, and a particular website that Noreen has set up. More information available there. Now, for the sake of time, just going forward a little bit, how did you then began to get involved, or you did begin to get involved with some legislation? After the fact, you're seeing things aren't being done, right? I mean, that was the response you were from the authorities, correct?
That's correct. And I knew that no other family should have to go through the anguish we did and then have to fight the system on top of it. So I wrote legislation, went to made an appointment to see Governor Branstad. He helped me with the legislative process. We found somebody to sponsor the bill, and the Johnny Gosch Bill was signed into law in July of 1984, and 1 month later, Eugene Martin, another paper boy from Des Moines, was kidnapped and has never been seen since either. And he was the beneficiary of that law because it forced the police to have to get involved right away. They couldn't wait the 72 hours because now there was a law to provide for an immediate investigation.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 years after Johnny was kidnapped, yet another boy was kidnapped from Des Moines. His name is Mark Allen, and he lived over in Urbandale, and it wasn't a paperboy situation. He was on his way to a friend's house to do schoolwork and left his home, and it was only a couple block walk, and he never made it. And his kidnapping is listed as a stranger abduction or kidnapping as well. And it was the National Center for Missing Children that notified me about his case because his case did not receive the publicity that Johnny's and Eugene Martin's got here.
Certainly. And any explanation as to why that?
I think very much publicity about yet a third kidnapping would have panicked the city. I think a lid was put on it for that reason. I really do. And I do believe all three boys were taken by the same faction. We have information to indicate that. However, the police have not come out and stated that ever. But 9 years after the kidnapping, a young man came forward by the name of Paul Benassi, and he confessed to his part of the kidnapping, what he did to help kidnap Johnny. And it went all through the news and all sorts of things, and Judge Urban, there was a court trial in February of 1999, and Judge Urban, a federal judge, ruled that Paul Benassi was telling the truth. And that was a federal ruling. So I took that federal ruling, and I went to the county attorney here and to the West Des Moines police, asking them to investigate what Paul Benassi said, because previously they had not even talked to Paul Benassi. They weren't interested in what he had to say. And since it was proven that he was telling the truth, I thought this was very valid. To this day, I have not been able to get anyone with law enforcement, anyone with authority, to go to Paul Benassi, get the information, and utilize it. That is not only frustrating, but it's heartbreaking in this day and age. And the technology we have, I do believe these cases, all of them, could have been solved years ago. And
very easily. I was on my way in today, and I was talking with a colleague about the program that I was going to be doing this morning, and going to be talking with you. And he was marveling at. He said, you would think that we are a civilized people, but there is such a gap between what we consider to be civilized and what in reality is going on, really right underneath our noses.
Well, that's just it. It is going right underneath our noses, and people don't realize that it is a form of organized crime.
Right, and you mentioned it. Largely because of the money associated with it, correct?
That's right. You can sell a child, let's say you sell a packet of drugs, whatever the drug of choice is, and the people use it. Okay? Well, you've made money off of it, but yes, hopefully they come back and buy more. But with the child, you can keep selling that same child over and over and over. There's no need to have to go get a new supply right away. That child can keep producing money through the prostitution levels.
Right.
And that's what makes it so lucrative. And so the information that Paul Benassi brought us, while it was valuable to us, it has not brought about resolution or justice at this point. And then 25 years later, on August 27th, which was my birthday, there was a package delivered to my home. It was outside the door when I opened the door that morning. It was a Sunday, and I was just reaching out to get the Sunday paper, and I just thought my neighbor maybe had put a card there for me or something. And I brought the envelope in and opened it up, and there were photographs of my son tied up, bound, gagged, and looking very drugged. And you've seen these photographs because I've presented them at a couple of conferences. That was the beginning of a trail that I didn't realize existed. These photographs were kept by someone for all these years. We've had the photographs tested, authenticated by the lab at the National Center for Missing Children. They have determined that the photographs were taken in the 1980s at the time Johnny was kidnapped, that they were probably taken within the first 6 or 8 months after he was kidnapped because he physically had not changed that much, and that the pictures are indeed Johnny. And after the news broke, because what I didn't realize at first was that that same packet of pictures that I received, there were several more packets that were delivered to people throughout the country. There were 5 packets, and somebody went public with them and took them to the media. I did not. I took my copies to the West Des Moines police, and I asked them to start investigating. Well, lo and behold, within a very short time after the news went out that the pictures were here,